A scientist is a person who, instead of asking what, asks why. They're concerned with uncovering the nature of the world around them, and do so by asking and testing questions never considered before.
I believe a scientist is someone who researches a specific topic or answers a specific experimental question and gains enough research to go back and give valuable information to others researching this topic or just to answer their own question.
To me, a scientist is somebody who observes the world around them to make sense of it. Somebody who is working to discover the seemingly undiscoverable.
I think anyone can be a scientist because anyone can do science, or at least anyone can think like a scientist or approach a question or a problem with a scientific mindset. A scientist is just someone who asks questions about the world and tries to answer those questions in a more careful and systematic way.
I think it's important to know that there are kind of two extremes of a scientist, and then there's everyone who falls in between. On one end, there's the hobbyist scientists who do research in their everyday lives within their home or community to solve a problem. And then there's the more iconic idea of a scientist where there's people doing research in a white lab coat with the big goggles on their faces, and that's maybe what more people think about when they think about a scientist. And then there's also everybody that's in between those two extremes, and I think that I would fall somewhere in between those. Hi, my name is Alyssa Cole. I was born and raised in Homer, Alaska. I'm currently a junior in undergrad at Pacific University studying environmental science with an emphasis in biology. I'm passionate about the natural world in which we live and the impact that we have on our planet, both positive and negative. I have goals and aspirations to work for Fish and Game in fisheries management and restoration.
My name is Marley Scholdice, and I'm a junior at Florida State University. I'm majoring in biology and minoring in chemistry and Spanish. I'm from Alpharetta, Georgia, and ever since I was a child, I've always been very fascinated by the ecosystems and species around me. I am particularly interested in fungi and plants, and I love learning about their biology, their interactions with other species, and also how we as humans can use them more sustainably. And I'd love to carry these interests over into a career in ecology. I'm also devoted to learning how we can mitigate human-caused threats to the environment, such as climate change and overharvesting.
Hey y'all, I'm Mason Hoskins, and I'm an undergraduate student at Pacific University studying environmental biology. I have passions for protecting the environment around us and maintaining the beauty of the earth. And because of this, I have goals of becoming a climate activist of some kind. I also would like to work on an agricultural farm and do research there to learn and work to find means of protecting the environment in our agricultural settings.
Hi everyone, my name's Nahaku. I'm a senior at Pacific University. Well, I was a senior at Pacific this past year. I just graduated class of 2021 and I majored in environmental biology. I'm from Hawaii, and one of my career goals is to work in restoration or conservation ecology back home. I'm especially interested in fighting invasive species and helping to restore some of our invaded native forests. One fun fact about me is I'm kind of famous in our REU for having these long nails that kind of look like claws. And everybody always asks, how do you do anything with those nails? But the REU folks know that they're kind of like built-in tweezers, and they're actually really helpful when we have to move our caterpillars around and place them on the plants or put them on the scale. And everybody else had to use real tweezers, but I could just use my nails.
Greetings and humble salutations. My name is Shazne Marsh, and I am a third-year biological science major on a pre-med track attending the Florida State University. One fun fact about me is that my future aspirations have never changed. Ever since I could remember, I've always wanted to be a doctor. I remember putting mini sign-up sheets in front of my door and telling my parents to sign up for checkups. Until this day, I remember those memories like they were yesterday. And knowing that I've always wanted to be someone to help others and to impact their lives in such a way that doctors do is something that literally makes me smile every time I speak about it.
REU stands for Research Experience for Undergrads.
It is a research fellowship funded by a grant from the National Science Foundation.
I am studying why the distribution of eaten plants varies so much from one place to another, and I'm looking at this both within an individual plant and then across the population of plants.
This is called variability in herbivory, or how much herbivore damage varies between plants. High variability in herbivory would describe when some plants are badly damaged while others have very little to no damage. Low variability would be where all plants have a similar amount of damage. In our experiment, we're investigating whether putting fertilizer on kale plants might cause them to have more or less variable herbivory than unfertilized plants.
We looked at herbivore movement, which is basically whether an insect is restricted to eating from only one plant, or they have options, like they can choose to eat from multiple plants. And how does this ability to move or inability to move among plants affect how much they eat?
In this experiment, we found that fertilized plants had less variable damage than unfertilized plants. We think that this may be because fertilized plants are better food sources than unfertilized plants. The caterpillar on a better food source is less likely to leave the plant looking for food. So each plant likely had only one caterpillar on it, and as a result, relatively even damage. Caterpillars on unfertilized plants may have gone looking for a better plant and were more likely to group together on a single plant, causing higher variability.
Other experiment looked at what we called host variation, the host being the host plant or the plant that an insect is eating off of, and then variation meaning we vary what host plants the insect can eat from. So can it eat from only one type of plant, or can it eat from more than one type of plant? And we asked, how does growing two different plants together, so think of it as growing two different vegetables in the same garden versus only one type of vegetable in the garden. How does that affect how much of those plants get eaten by insects?
In this experiment, we found that there was more variable damage when caterpillars were allowed to move. This could be because this kind of caterpillar, called Spodoptera, is known to eat in groups when they're young. If they can move, they might cluster on one plant, causing it to have more damage than the other plants.
So farmers, of course, raise these crops such as cabbage, such as kale, such as lettuce. And sometimes insects will eat these crops instead of farmers distributing them. So we need to know how to avoid insects eating the specific plants that farmers are growing.
I think this topic is important because it's happening all around us. We can find insects eating plants inside our own homes where we have house plants. We can find it in our lawns, in our landscaping. It's everywhere. By studying this, it helps us be more in tune with what is occurring around us.
Hi, I'm Stacy Halpern. I'm a professor in the biology department at Pacific University. My area of expertise within biology is evolutionary ecology, especially plants and their interactions with animals, especially insects. I came to this career because I love biology, but I also love working with young people who are getting excited about biology too. And this is what I hope will be the lasting impact of my career, is through the interactions I have with students.
Hi, my name is Jessie Mutz, and I am a postdoctoral researcher at Florida State University. And a postdoctoral researcher, or a postdoc for short, is a position that you have after you get a PhD, but before getting a permanent position. So it's a temporary position at a university, usually involved with research and teaching and mentorship. I consider myself an evolutionary ecologist, so that means that I'm interested in how the traits of organisms, so the traits of, say, plants and animals, affect their interactions with one another and how populations grow and change through time. And one fun fact about me is that before going to graduate school to become a biologist, I was an actor and director for several years and still very much enjoy performing and watching Shakespeare.
Hi, I'm Brian Inouye. I'm an ecologist. I study plants and I study insects, especially populations of insects and populations of plants and how they interact. Like, not so much how does an individual insect feed on a plant, but what happens when you've got a whole population of insects and they're feeding on some kind of plant. Does that change the type of plants that live in an area? A fun fact about me, I like bicycles. I like to ride bikes. In fact, I've been a bicycle commuter to every job I've ever had starting in high school. And I've been bicycle touring. I've even built bicycles. I've been around bikes for a long time. I like bicycles.
Hi, my name is Nora Underwood. I am a professor of biology at Florida State University. And in my research, I study what controls how many plants you see in a place or how many insects you see in a place or in a different year from year to year. So if you're a gardener, for instance, I'm interested in understanding the factors that might make there be more weeds in one area of your garden than another, or more insects attacking your tomatoes one year than in another. That's the kind of thing I want to understand. I came to science kind of late. I started college as an English major, and I also thought maybe I would be a professional dancer for a while. I loved to read and I loved to dance, and I am not at all sorry I became a scientist. I think it's the right career for me. I'm really happy with it, but I still love to read and I still love to dance, and I dance any chance I get.
I think the thing that I enjoyed the most from this experience was getting to work with other students on an experiment that I was really invested in. I was like choosing and getting to decide and work with these students on designing an experiment. And so I found that to be super fun. I also was working with students from across the country in Florida. And that was super cool to be able to be getting on Zoom with them and planning this experiment, and they're doing part of the experiment and we're doing part of the experiment. And that was so enjoyable just to meet all these other people, the mentors and the other students in this REU experience.
I have to be honest, I was actually pretty scared of professors before the REU. I had just gotten out of my freshman year and I had some pretty negative experiences with professors. I felt really discouraged and didn't feel like I belonged in my major at all, which was pretty terrible. However, I can honestly say that this experience has completely turned around how I view my education and even myself as a scientist. I was dreading returning to campus before, but I'm genuinely excited about coming back and hope to get way more involved in research in the future. I'm also grateful to all my mentors for all of your guidance and kindness. I really can't tell you what a difference you made for me.
Honestly, just the opportunity to do research during COVID has been really great. I think that I'm really lucky to have this opportunity to do research and work with other people. Some of them being on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast, and be working on a project collaboratively during these times is kind of unheard of right now, so I feel just really lucky for that. And then also meeting the people I've met and building relationships that I will have for years to come has been really special and important for me.
I loved working with our plants in the greenhouse, planting the seeds, going in after school to water them and talk to them, and watching them grow into these big, beautiful kale and mustards. Alyssa and I did a little taste test of them, and that was fun. I had so much fun spending time with the other REU folks. in the lab or in the greenhouse with Mason and Alyssa and Stacy, or on Zoom or FaceTime with Shaznay and Marley and all the other mentors. I just loved getting to know everyone, and I'm so happy that I have all these amazing friends and amazing mentors that I know I can call on whenever I need someone to talk to.
I think just being in a spring semester of college while taking courses, as well as committing 20 hours weekly to a research project that's usually done in the summer, was something that was challenging, but we have all completed it with flying colors. And I would like to give my colleagues a big shout out, especially my mentors, for making this happen. And I think the biggest thing that we've all did during this process was just be accountable and stay committed to making this all work.
My advice to REU students is to always spend some time being meta. So, for example, taking some time to think about what is the best way for you to learn in a classroom setting, or reflecting on what works and what doesn't work when you're putting together a data sheet or any other sort of task that you will need to do again and again.
I'm going to give 2 pieces of professional advice. One is learn how to write. You write for so many jobs, so many tasks, getting through life. Being able to write so you can express yourself clearly, so you can communicate clearly. Writing is just such a valuable skill. Learn how to write. Part of being a good writer is getting feedback and learning how to respond and incorporate that feedback. And so that's my number 2 piece of advice, is learn how to get feedback and learning how to deal with their feedback. Learning how to respond to that feedback and embrace the suggestions that people give you for making things better. That's one way you get to be a better writer.
First, I will say the old thing that there are no bad questions. If you have a question, please ask it. It means we haven't explained it well enough, we assumed some knowledge, or you just needed to hear it again, and that's fine. We like answering those questions. And the second thing is, we love being mentors and getting to know you. So please don't be afraid to hang out with us, to see us as people rather than professors, and to ask us any questions you have about anything. We'll enjoy making those connections.
So my main piece of advice for students is to stay curious. When you're curious about things, you will learn about them, right? Your curiosity will drive you to learn. And when you learn about things, the world becomes a more interesting place. And the subjects that you're studying become more interesting. And then you become more curious about them, and you realize there's even other things to be curious about. So there's this beautiful cycle of being curious and learning, and then being more curious. So stay curious.